You certainly are the loser in your situation, Elliotte. When you say you have some ability to change a tire, I think some is doing a lot of work.
She's the loser. I am.
Oh my God.
I am the big winner. There's no question.
Welcome to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by GMC. Dom Shamani at the controls, Kyle Bukauskas, Elliotte Friedman. Friedge, you know the old saying, a bad attitude is like a flat tire. If you don't change it, you won't go anywhere. So when you hear that, what do you think of?
That's pretty good, Kyle. I have to say that's a good open. Bit of an inside joke, so I have to explain it. We're in Red Rocks in the Colorado area outside Denver. It is my 15th anniversary gift to my wife. She's always wanted to see a concert at Red Rocks, so we are out here this weekend. And earlier on Sunday, we found our rental car with 2 punctures in the tire. I'm still trying to determine how exactly this happened. I did not hit anything. So this has happened to me at least once before. I tried to change the tire previously. I have some ability to do this. And I remember they told me you never touch a rental car like that. You never want to be responsible if any damages occur. So I didn't do that today, but we had to switch the rental cars. And let me tell you something. All the men who listen to this podcast, I would say this. We all know one truth that we all have. Our partners are all much better than we are. We are total losers compared to their partners, which is why you have to buy and I have to buy anniversary gifts, and they don't. Don't ever forget that. That goes triple for Kyle.
You certainly are the loser in your situation, Elliotte. When you say you have some ability to change a tire, I think some is doing a lot of work.
She's the loser. I am.
Oh my God.
I am the big winner. There's no question. She got stuck with me. I got her. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, some is doing a lot of work there, but believe it or not, I have changed a tire before.
All right.
Have you?
Hopefully no flat tires.
Have you?
Actually, I haven't. I haven't had to yet.
Just another.
I haven't been around as long.
Just
as
another example of what an embarrassment you are to your father, who is very handsy, from what I understand.
Yeah, I am a great failure, especially when you consider my dad not only really great hands-on with a lot of stuff, but also knows his way around an automobile better than most. And the fact that I didn't pick up any of that growing up. No excuse given my upbringing.
Kyle Bukauskas, Family Embarrassment, chapter 2356. All right, let's go.
Great. What a start. Hopefully no flat tires as we move forward here, Elliotte. Hey, hockey was back this weekend. We had rookie tournaments and rookie showcases going on around the NHL. Fans getting excited already with some young players making some noise in a couple of places. We'll get to all of that in a little bit. But first, some news as well. Out in Columbus, Elliotte, Don Waddell, the GM, had some quotes to Aaron Portzline in The Athletic over the weekend that they were looking to add some forwards and not just on PTOs per se. And the news on Sunday that James van Riemsdyk signs a 1-year deal at $900K shouldn't come as a shock to any.
No, it shouldn't. There were some rumblings about Van Riemsdyk going to Seattle on a PTO. Columbus had been one of the teams he'd been talking to even before the terrible tragedy happened. But once Waddell mentioned that, as you said, to Aaron Portzline, that was definitely one of the names that was circulating. James van Riemsdyk had almost 40 points last year. He's still one of the best in the league at what he does, which is be a net front presence, and he's a really likable guy. And that's one of the things that Columbus was looking at, just somebody who's going to fit in a situation where a lot of the players in that team are still going to be in shock. I honestly, Kyle, I'd wondered if there was any chance that Phil Kessel may end up there, just simply because, and I think this is a serious season for Columbus. They were disappointed last year. They want to show some improvement, but I kind of wondered about a guy like like Kessel simply because he's got the reputation of being someone who really lightens the mood and it just creates a lot of enjoyment when he's around. But I totally get the Van Riemsdyk signing. It makes perfect sense. And as camps open, there's still a few players out there I think a lot of us are wondering about, from Kevin Lankinen. We know the Vancouver Canucks are interested in him. He's got a couple of teams that have looked in his direction. Also Cal Clutterbuck. I'm a little surprised he hasn't caught on somewhere. Lou Lamoriello saying last week that Clutterbuck won't be back, and Matt Martin's coming in a PTO. I just think in the regular season, Clutterbuck is the kind of guy who can bring you energy in those dog days of the season when you're sitting there like, oh my God, it's game 36. I'm not in the mood for this tonight. Like, he's one of the guys that kind of does that. So I'm a little surprised he hasn't found anything, but there are a few of those guys out there as camps open. I'm really curious to see what happens. And also, Kyle, it's people hope it's a pressure point for some of these unsigned free agents. I don't know that I buy that. This isn't 1952 where guys work in a furniture store or as a beer distributor all summer. They show up 40 pounds overweight and use camp to get back into shape. Everybody's in great shape now. So I don't know if people see it as the important pressure point that maybe we used to. I think they'd like to see it that way, but I don't know that it really is.
All right, so the hockey we saw over the weekend, there was some great buzz in Montreal, Elliotte. 2 games between the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens. The arena there downtown, believed it was sold out or very close to, so nearly 20,000 people in there for both games to watch a couple of...
Did you go down?
I did not go down.
Already cutting corners, I see. Fine mid-season
west
form.
of Ottawa.
Yep.
It's a long year. Pace yourself.
Pace yourself.
You got to pace yourself. Yes, exactly. I didn't want to get a flat tire. That's why I didn't go.
That's a good call. Yeah.
So there was plenty to be excited about on both sides, whether you're a Toronto fan or Montreal fan. Fraser Minton, Easton Cowan. But for Montreal, Lane Hutson was someone that got a taste of things at the end of last season. And the one thing about the Montreal fan base, they show up in droves at the worst of times,
yeah.
But when they sense there is someone or something, some hype to get behind, they really do their job in getting behind it. And Lane Hutson seems to be the latest example of that.
So first of all, I'd like to give a lot of credit to the fans of hockey, just to start. We're very lucky. We have passionate fans who listen to this podcast, but we have passionate fans who follow the sport. Like I couldn't be on social media as much as I usually am this weekend, which is probably actually a good thing. But anytime I look to see some of the results of the rookie games, as you mentioned, the Montreal-Toronto one was incredible. The stuff that was going on in Buffalo, there was a lot of interest. But like you looked, like Vegas was playing Seattle. Macklin Celebrini played his first game sort of for the Sharks. The Nashville kids were playing. Like everywhere I saw there were games, there was a lot of passion about it. And some of these fans are already in mid-season form, like just tearing into each other and tearing into their prospects. It's hilarious.
Did you see like Ottawa? They had their prospect showcase out in the one in Buffalo.
And they lost 9-1.
Unfortunately, they got crushed by, and as the tweets or the posts are coming out, now it's 7-0 New Jersey, and it's like Sens fans in the comments being, we are so back. Like the fans don't need training camp either. Like they come in shape too.
We are lucky. Like as a sport, we are
Yes.
lucky. We have great fans, and this is a perfect example of it. Normally like in a 9-1 game, I check out the replies just to get a good laugh. I really couldn't, but I was only imagining what was going on underneath them. It's really funny. But so I'll tell you a funny story about Hutson. So I've been really talking up Mishkov. I've said in a couple of places, like, you're penciling him in for the Calder, right? Like, I know it's really premature. Thanks. But it's hard not to look at this kid. And you talk about excitement. Like, those Philly fans were like... those Philly fans were more excited than Shannon Sharp on the weekend. Like that's how things were going for the Philly fans. And so I said that you're penciling him in for like the Calder as your Calder favorite. And I don't know if it got aggregated somewhere or where one of these Montreal players heard it, but one of the players texted me and said, Lane Hutson is going to make a run for the Calder this year. And it's early, and I know that, but apparently what this guy has been telling me is that in the captain skates the Canadians have been having, like they're sitting there and saying, can you believe what this kid can do? And I think it's going to be different for him than it's going to be for Mishkov because, one, I think it's always harder for defensemen than it is for forwards. And number two, Mishkov is a bigger guy than Hudson. Hudson, I guess, again, I didn't see, but I heard that I read a bit that he got hit a couple times. Like when this is day one of prospect camp. Wait till the regular games begin, assuming he's on the team, and they're going to be going after him. So he's going to have a bigger curve than I think Mishkov will. But the Montreal guys, they're like they think this guy is the real deal. So I like hearing this stuff early. I like it when players say, "Hey, pay attention to our guy." I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Hudson play the big games because, first of all, that this league's going to be like, let's see what this guy's really about. And he's going to take his licks and he's going to probably have some -4 nights, but you can see the talent. I mean, you really can see the talent.
Yeah, I worked Lane Hudson's first game in the NHL at the end of last year. It was in Detroit. And it's funny, one of the players or the player that he had like fat heads of and posters of in his bedroom growing up was Patrick Kane, who was playing for the Red Wings then too. So like NHL debut, playing against your childhood idol, and it's that Showtime vibe, right? He's given that off already.
He's going to be one of those guys that, when he touches the puck in Montreal, they're going to be wound up to see what he can do. You can see the hype machine is turned up to 11.
Très bien. Elliotte, you mentioned Matvei Michkov with the Flyers. He scored in his first game at their rookie event. But what's going on with their goalie prospect, Alexei Kolosov? So he's a third-round pick back in 2021, spent last season in the KHL, then actually came over to North America. He played 2 games with Lehigh Valley in the American League at the end of the year, but was not at development camp, not at their rookie camp. What is the latest on that front?
Well, so I think Philadelphia is still trying to sort this out and where this is going to go and what it's going to mean. I'd heard at the draft he wasn't coming. I mentioned it at the time, but people, like, the one challenging thing about reporting on this is that what is true yesterday may not necessarily be true today. And the people who said to me he wouldn't be coming this year, they turned out to be correct. But, the Flyers have had done a lot of good work in Russia. Like, Mishkov wanted to play for him. They kept that quiet. Fedotov, they did a lot of work on, but they got him to come over against a lot of odds. So I think they don't want to give up too easily. What I've heard there is that teams have called and said, what's going on? And I've heard that Philly has said, we're not committed to trading him, but right now we're thinking second rounder. Now, that's a big price, but that's Philly's price. And I think the challenge for these other teams is they've got to figure out if their situation will be any different with Kolosov if they trade for him. Like, what one manager said to me was that, if you take a look at Philly, there's been few teams that have had the successes, if anyone, with players out of Russia in the last year that Philly's had. So if they're having trouble with this player, do we have any reason to believe it would be any different for us or anyone else? So I think that's kind of what's going on. Teams are trying to determine, is it worth acquiring him? But that, from what I understand, is the price that Philly has put on them or on him is a second round draft pick.
Okay, elsewhere around the league, like anything going on with, like we talked a lot at last week's episode of the pending RFAs that still don't have new deals signed. There's an article in the Detroit Free Press, Elliotte, about their RFAs. Anything to update in Hockeytown?
Well, the Detroit Free Press, yes, they said that Steve Yzerman wants to keep their salaries below Dylan Larkin, which is 8.7. I don't have confirmation of that from Yzerman, but the story makes sense. Like, logically, it does. Dylan Larkin was a UFA when he signed, or heading into UFA, and these players are not. I don't think that would be necessarily a problem for Raymond. I think if there is a player who potentially, without knowing for sure, but if there's a player who I suspect might try to go above 8.7 of the two, it would be Seider. But again, I don't know 100%. But we'll see. I mean, from what I understand about Raymond, someone said they heard about a report out of Sweden that there'd been some progress. I didn't see that report. I'd heard something similar, but until it's done, it's not done. So we'll see where it goes, but I don't think that 8.7 number would be a factor for Raymond, although I do think it could potentially be a factor for Seider. The other thing we mentioned last week was we talked about how apparently the Stützle contract in Ottawa, like some teams, and I believe Detroit's one of them, are kind of like, we understand that that's Ottawa's business, but we're not going to allow you to use that as a comparable. I think that has entered the case in Winnipeg with Cole Perfetti's deal. Not Stützle's contract, but Shane Pinto's. And by the way, Pinto, he was a real hit at the NHL NHLPA media tour. We didn't do him.
Was he ever?
Our content group did him, but there were a lot of people who didn't know Shane Pinto. Like, a lot of the people who were there hadn't dealt a lot with Pinto before, and they were saying how much they enjoyed working with him. But Pinto's deal, like, Cole Perfetti's numbers are pretty comparable to Pinto's, but I just don't think Winnipeg wants to go quite to where those numbers are. And I got a call on the weekend from someone after our last podcast dropped, and they were kind of laughing about the point about Perfetti being like the only guy maybe ever to go to that tour without a contract. Well, I believe on the weekend, he was at like a fishing charity event for the Jets, and this person called this the nicest contract dispute ever. Like, Perfetti and the Jets haven't made a deal yet, and he's representing them at charity events, at the media tour. But I still think that one will be a bridge. But to this point, they haven't gotten it done. I haven't heard a ton on Thomas Harley, except to hear that doesn't appear to be a ton of angst there. Mercer, I'm sticking with what I heard, that it's likely to be a bridge. Other than that, am I missing anyone, Kyle, off the top of my head? I can't think about it.
Swayman?
Oh,
Did you see him on stage over the weekend?
I didn't. You mentioned this to me in the prep about that he was on stage with a band. Which band was it?
Yeah, Dalton and the Sheriffs. I'm not terribly familiar with them, but he went right out there with a guitar, Henrik Lundqvist style. So whatever's going on with the negotiation, he doesn't seem to be stressed by any of it.
Yeah, I think that picked up towards the end of last week, but at this point in time, as we tape on Sunday night, I don't have any knowledge of a breakthrough or anything like that. And I do think it's possible we could see something with Crosby this week, although, again, like we all know now that one is going to get done at some point. That one's getting done.
So can I just go back to Seider for a quick sec, Elliotte?
Sure, absolutely.
I wonder what would be the proper comparable for him. I understand you say it makes sense that the Red Wings don't want to go above where Larkin is at 8.7, but only played 3 years, hasn't missed a game, won a Calder Trophy, has pretty good numbers production-wise. Like, I look at McAvoy now, he did a bridge before signing his big ticket, so it's a bit of a different circumstance there. He's at 9.5, so I, of course, can't see him getting to that point. But do you have a thought or a hunch of whose Seider's camp would be looking at that would be an accurate comparable as they try to navigate their way through this?
Well, the thing is, like, if it's going to be term, I don't think it would be at McAvoy, but I don't think it would be far off. Like, one of the real challenges, like a lot of these teams and agents are having right now is, where's the cap going? And I think that teams want to lock, in most cases, not necessarily, I don't want to speak for Yzerman, but in most cases, teams want to lock guys up now as much as they can because they know the cap is going up, and that means that even though your cap's going up, your individual salaries are going to go up too. And I think there are some players who feel if they're going to lock in, they don't want to lock in at a number when the cap really takes off, as it's supposed to, and both the league and the players believe it will. They don't want to lock it at a number they look back and say, oh man, I was dumb to lock in at that number. So I think with Seider, like a guy like Seider, it's not only the comparable of now, it's where everyone kind of thinks the cap is going. And so it's sort of like a two-sided issue, both those things. So someone might look at this and say, like I said, I don't think it's McAvoy, but I don't think it's really far. And if you assume this Free Press story is true, and the logic makes a lot of sense, if they want to keep both those guys under Larkin, then you've got to believe that at least on some level, somebody has asked for over Larkin. So if one of those two players was going to do it, it says to me it's not Raymond, it's probably Seider. But again, I don't know that for sure.
Plenty of things to keep an eye on as we inch closer to the opening of training camp. And Elliotte, as you know, one of the things that help bring the salary cap up is broadcast rights. And Amazon comes into the play here this season. They are the rights holders for Monday nights in Canada, streamed on Amazon Prime. They had their crews everywhere, it felt, at times throughout the playoffs, following a handful of different star players. We had a few conversations when we were in Vegas last week with a number of different people, Bill Daly among them, and the reviews already seemed really positive for this docu-series that's set to come out a little later on. They're doing a huge press event next week to unveil all the plans and dates around that. What are you hearing in terms of what fans can be looking forward to with this new content?
Well, first of all, as you hinted there, I've heard really good things about it. And I believe it's the 23rd where Amazon is not only going to announce some more details about this, but I think also they're going to announce their Canadian broadcast team as well. But, part of me is like, to be honest, Kyle, like part of me is a little bit jealous. Like, why isn't, we're a rights holder, why isn't this on our air? Or why didn't we do this, for example? But that's over now. What are you going to do? But one of the things we talked about, and Luke Fox wrote some thumbnails from some of our conversations, and one of them was with the Deputy Commissioner, Bill Daly, where he talked about how the teams didn't get a chance to how the teams didn't get a chance to edit these or give their approval. Like when the Maple Leafs did their Amazon series, there was negotiation. Like the Leafs had some say, and there was a particular an interaction between Sheldon Keefe and William Nylander that the agent fought to keep out. And I'm told this time, like, they were really strict about it. Like, no. And I've heard that there's a couple of cases in particular where people are nervous about how some of these scenes are going to be perceived, either for the team or for the player or in general. And they're definitely going to create some buzz. And like I said, I think people here are really excited for it, but they definitely think there's going to be some interesting reaction to some of the scenes. And I don't know specifically what they're talking about, but that's what they've told me. And there are some people apparently who are unhappy that they couldn't get some creative control on it.
I still remember like that first HBO 24/7 Penguins Capitals first episode, one of the early scenes. Dan Bilesma's in the room doing the starting lineup in Pittsburgh, and he looks at Crosby and he said, 87, you're going. And Sid just with like the subtle tip of the cap with his hat on. I remember like the hair on my arm standing up thinking like, I've never seen this access before. And hopefully with what's to come here with this docu-series, there's a few more examples of feeling that way again, because
I always remember Bruce Boudreau. Remember when he goes
Yes.
into the Washington dressing room and just tears a strip off those guys?
that, or going to the mall with his kids to go Christmas shopping for his wife.
Yeah, I didn't like. I felt I didn't. That one, the one that bothered me was the wing sauce. I didn't like that.
Oh,
I didn't like that. I thought that really hurt him, to be perfectly honest. I didn't like that. But that one where he goes into the room and starts yelling. I was born in 1970. I had teachers who used to yell at me like that when I was a kid. It was like,
Right.
oh my God, I think I'm having flashbacks watching this. That one,
Yes.
that was the one that always stood out to me as being particularly incredible.
Yes, this line of "Don't just think you want it, go out and bleeping want it" will live in
Yes.
my head till the end of time. So good.
Good advice.
So Elliotte, that brings us. It is good advice as we get to the final thought, which is presented by GMC. Interesting news out of the Western Hockey League at the end of last week. Braxton Whitehead, 20 years old, entering his overage year in the dub, plays for the Regina Pats. So on Friday, he announced through his social media that he has verbally committed to playing in the NCAA at Arizona State next season. He's the first player in the CHL to do so, and as of right now, there is not an agreement in place allowing CHL players to then go play college in the U.S. after they are done. So, Elliotte, bring us up to speed here, because this is something you've talked about on this podcast quite a lot the last little while.
Well, I believed it was going to happen, and it's nice to actually be right about something for a change. And this is just another,
Congratulations.
thank you. And this is just another step. Like, I still don't know how this is all going to work, and I still don't know the timeline. You know, the hockey coaches were really against this, especially of the teams that are already established and doing very well. They think they're winning the battle against the CHL, and they saw no need to give in. It took them a lot of time to realize that this was not a hockey issue. This is an NCAA issue, and they have been consistently getting hammered in court and losing in court as the era changes and players can make money off of their name, image, and likeness. It was only a matter of time. And this is a nod to the fact it's going to happen. And who knows, maybe they already know the timeline. Maybe they're hoping this accelerates the timeline. But it's going to occur. And, you know, I think you should also mention, because we were off when this occurred, but last month, a player named Ryland Masterson, he plays in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League for Fort Erie. He sued. And, you know, what happened to Masterson happened to a friend of mine's son. And actually, I really hated this rule, and I hated that this could happen. Masterson, I don't know how many OHL exhibition games he played, but basically even playing a second ends you in the NCAA's eyes. And I remember a few years ago, there was a friend of mine, their kid was, you know, a solid hockey player, had a chance to play in the O, and was a great student. And I said to him, like, do you have any hopes for your son going to the NCAA? And he told me, yeah, we'd like to keep that avenue open. Who knows where we could go? And he was like 16, 17 at the time. I can't remember how old he was. Well, he had an opportunity to play an OHL exhibition game, and he was very excited about it. And I said, does he still want to go to the NCAA? And we go, maybe. We've got some opportunities. I said, you can't let him play. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, if you let him play 1 second, he can't go to the NCAA. He's like, no, you're wrong. And he checked it, and it was right. And his son really wanted to play. And I said, well, I never want to stand in the way of a kid's dreams. You're 16 years old. You should be able to do a lot of things you really hope to do. But I just said, like, you can't do it if you want to go to the NCAA. And the kid played, and he really regretted it, and I always felt terrible for him. And that's what happened to this kid, Masterson. And basically one of the arguments he's brought up is that the Canucks prospect, Tom Willander, you know, he played with pros in Sweden, and he could play in the NCAA last year, which to me is a perfectly sound and logical argument against why this should happen. Like, I really hate this rule. It's stupid. But, you know, like, so he brought the lawsuit, and that lawsuit, it's only a matter of time before all this changes. And, you know, there's a couple of things, I think. number one, I think it was Pat LaFontaine who was the driving force behind this. But a few years ago, they were talking about really changing the junior development format. Like USHL teams could play for the Memorial Cup. All the CHL players could play in the NCAA. Maybe you make the draft a 19-year-old draft, except the first round is for 18 years old. That way you can go in if you're a top player like Connor Bedard. But other than that, it's a 19-year-old draft. And, I remember people saying to me, it's a good idea, but it's premature. Like, for one thing, you need the Players Association to sign off on it. So I am curious to see if this becomes a collectively bargained thing, because the league brought it up to the general managers last year at the GM meeting in March. And we see this as part of a bigger picture. But the other thing I also really wonder about, Kyle, is do we get to a situation where there's so many more players for, the top teams feel they don't need these players. Okay, well, look, like Tennessee State, a historically black college, with the help of the Predators, is starting a team for next season, not this season. And maybe there's just more players who can play, and there's more teams eventually get created. Like, that's what you want. Expand your footprint of NCAA hockey. And that's for both men and women. I mean, women aren't as affected by this, but still, you want more men's and women's programs. And I can't help wonder if that's what the league is thinking. More players in the States. And I know you have a big concern about Canadian university hockey, but more players in the States means more programs. And I think that's like a win-win for everybody.
For sure. And I could see why a league like the WHL would be excited about this, because that would be part of the pitch to getting young players to come and play in their league, to say, enjoy your time in the WHL, and if you wish to pursue an opportunity stateside in the NCAA and play Div 1 and get a chance to live that lifestyle, you can. But as you mentioned, Elliotte, like, U Sports can't be loving the idea of this. There's just a lot of layers to this story, and Canadian university hockey, which doesn't have the same fanfare, the same budget as programs in the US do, but man, it is some phenomenal hockey to go watch, and another opportunity for players, once they're done major junior, to get an education as well.
I'm all for it. Count me in.
All right. The final thought, presented by GMC. When we come back, another one of our interviews that we recorded last week while Elliotte and I were down in Vegas as part of the Player Media Tour. Connor Bedard, the reigning Calder Memorial Trophy winner, getting set for season number 2 with the Chicago Blackhawks. That conversation and a little bit more when we return to 32 Thoughts, the podcast. Listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Okay, before we get to Connor Bedard, we should remind you, as we mentioned on last week's podcast, the Thought Line is coming back. The first edition of this new season will be Friday's episode. If you forgot the phone number, 1-833-311-3232. You can also write to us via email, 32thoughts@sportsnet.ca.
And you are still welcome to bring the weird. Like, the weird.
That's where weird thrives.
Yes. You are still welcome to bring the weird.
Love it. Well said. So Connor Bedard, Elliotte, Calder Trophy. He has been on Instagram doing NFL predictions the last couple of weeks. He was a grouse grind stud this summer back home in the BC Lower Mainland. He was someone who, like a number of players, rolled into our set there last week in Vegas in a great mood and just a little bit of a different vibe now, having 1 year of NHL lifestyle under his belt.
I think different vibe is a great way to put it, Kyle. It's only taken you 2.5 podcasts to come up with a really good analogy, but different vibe it is. And that, I love that Instagram live. Like, obviously I didn't see it when it happened, but I saw some of the clips. Like, the fans loved it. That was number one. The fans loved it. Number two, I really liked it. Some of the clips I saw, I really enjoyed. To me, what he's doing is he's saying that, okay, last year was about, let's establish myself. let's be all business. And this year, he's still going to be all business because he's driven to be great, but he's going to drop his hair down a little bit and show a little bit more of him. And he did it in that Instagram Live, and did a little bit in our interview. And so I think this is a good. What it says to me is this is a player who is comfortable, not comfortable enough that they're not going to improve. Like I said, he's not wired that way, but he's driven, but he's comfortable enough to say, okay, I can give people a little bit more of the true me. And the other thing I'll say too is. Remember last year, I said to Nylander in Sweden, you look thicker, and he looked at me like I had a third ear sprouted on my forehead. I didn't say that to Bedard because I didn't want that same reaction, but he also looks thicker. Like he's a strong guy. He still looks young. He's got that youthful look to him, which is good. Keep that as long as you can from old gray guys like me. But he definitely looks thicker and stronger.
Just 19 years old and a lot of horsepower, the pride of North Vancouver, BC, our conversation with Connor Bedard. Enjoy. Connor Bedard of the Chicago Blackhawks. My first question is, which accomplishment were you most proud of? Winning the Calder Trophy, Rookie of the Year, or your 37-minute grouse grind time?
Maybe I'll go Calder, I guess. But no, I think... I don't know if you guys have been out to Van and done it or not, but it definitely sucks the grind. So, but yeah, no, two different things for sure.
This year will be I'm going to get it done this year.
Yeah.
It's about time.
It sucks. It sucks, but it's good. When you're done, you feel pretty good.
How did you feel about your time? Like, were you like, that's good, or I can do a lot better?
No, that was my best I've ever got. So hopefully next time do better, but I was happy.
How many times during the summer or during the week, I guess, during the summer, would you go do it?
Not crazy. I did it a couple times this summer. I feel like, I'm skating all the time, working out all the time. It's hard to fit in, but, when I get a chance, I'll go up and do it.
Yeah, I was told the Sedin twins at their peak, they did it in 31 minutes.
Oh, yeah. They're still doing it, I think.
Yes.
They did it at the Canucks camp, I think, and beat everyone. So
really,
yeah, it's kind of funny.
Oh my gosh! As long as you beat BX at it, that's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Yeah, for sure.
I also was watching a little bit of the Instagram Live or some of the clips that made it around on social media, and I wondered, like, first year, everyone's always very careful, don't want to do anything that causes too big a storm. But I wonder now if maybe that's a sign that you're feeling a little bit more comfortable and you're going to do a few more things to show that side of you.
Yeah, I'm not like a huge camera guy or anything, or so I think for me, it was just something fun with a couple of my buddies. We always just argue about sports or debate something, so we thought we'd go on there and show people, or if they like it or whatever, and we had a lot of fun with it. So hopefully people liked it, and looking at it from that standpoint, for me, it's just the spot I'm comfortable in, and maybe for fans, it gets to know me a little better.
So people did love it. What is the biggest Bedard and Friends sports argument? Like, what is the one that takes you guys totally off the rails?
Well, I think everyone would say Jordan-LeBron debate is probably the biggest one, but there's some other ones. There's some hockey ones, too, that we do that I'm not going to do any hockey ones because, obviously, I don't want to make any enemies, but no, there's just a lot of basketball ones that we get heated.
Are you Team Jordan or Team LeBron?
I'm playing in Chicago, so I'm going Team Jordan.
Very smart.
Very good answer.
Very smart.
I just think about, like, even right off the hop last year for you, like, you at least, as you say, maybe you're not one that seeks the spotlight of the camera as much as you can, but it looked like you were trying everything. Like, you were asked to do a lot of different things, and it seemed like you tried to make it all work. Like, how was that experience now looking back?
Yeah, it was, there's pros and cons to everything. I think looking at it, it's your draft year, your draft summer, and people don't know much about you, and that's probably going to be your busiest summer or leading into the year. So, to say I wasn't at all tired of it and, a little drained when, it was all going on would be a little bit of a lie. But I think once the season started and I was able to just play hockey, then it all slowed down a bit, and that was nice. So, but yeah, it was good, but also it was a little tiring.
What will be different for you this year, do you think?
All of that for sure, and then just the familiarity of playing in the league, knowing what I can do out there, knowing the routine of what's going to make me feel the best every game, and I think that's huge. Your first year is you're learning a lot on the fly, and I feel like I did that, and I'm feeling good going into year 2.
What was maybe the most surprising thing you learned? Maybe the thing that you weren't expecting?
I don't know if there was much I wasn't expecting, but it was just there's things that were on another level than I was expecting. Maybe it was probably more travel than I anticipated, and you're on the road more than I thought. And then just how good everyone is. Doesn't matter. You're going against first line, fourth line. It's just not going to be easy who you're going up against. So that's always an adjustment.
Can I ask you about your stick?
Yeah.
So I heard your last year junior, you're using one with a 67 flex, somewhere around there. Am I
think 70, yeah.
Okay. Has it gone up now that you've gotten to the NHL, or what do you...
It's still low 70s kind of area, similar. I tried to go up this summer, but just feels a little weird. So
What did you try?
Just 75, I think. And yeah, I'm just comfortable with what I'm using right now, and I do think it would be beneficial maybe to go up a bit, but right now I just feel comfortable where I'm at.
Yeah, because mid 70 flex still is incredibly whippy for adults.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's all the shooting mechanics that leaves you there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not the biggest guy, but I'm not the smallest, I'd say. So
right. You're a strong kid. Yeah.
It's pretty whippy, but it's just what feels comfortable with me.
Did you find a lot of guys tried to lean on that stick a little bit, break it, things like that? Did you get a lot of that?
Not really. People are just defending me the way they do, and I think maybe face-offs is something that it could help me to go up a bit, but obviously I'll just try to figure out other ways around it.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if there was any point throughout the year, you had a lot of great moments, but was there anything that stick out of getting back to the dressing room at the end of the game and be man, I just had my lunch money taken from me, just whatever the growing pains of your first year in the league.
Yeah, 5th game of my career in Colorado. I don't know if I touched the puck the whole night. I was just chasing it. I was skating around, and I don't think I did anything. And we lost 5-0, I think. So, but the first 4 games, I remember I was feeling good. I had a lot of puck touches, a lot of chances, and then that 5th one, we played Colorado, and it was bad. So that was one that sticks out to me.
Greatest moment of your rookie season?
I really enjoyed our home opener. Thought that was cool. I scored in that game too pretty quick, so that was really, really neat. And my family was there, and it was pretty electric in there, so it was fun.
Okay, last one for me. I noticed you're not wearing a watch. Now, Peter Mrazek, we interviewed him in Prague, and I learned in Prague he is the watch king.
Yeah.
And he said, I've got Seth Jones going, I've got Nick Foligno going, I've got a bunch of guys going. I said, how's Bedard's watch game? He goes, he doesn't have one, but I'm going to get him going.
Yeah.
So what is this story?
Well, yeah, I feel just out of the blue, he'll come up to you and be like, hey, man, you looking for a watch? And you'd be like, I'm good right now. But he'll kind of just always be bugging you about it. So, yeah, he's got some connections or whatever, I guess. And I think he's got a decent amount of nice watches.
Yes.
And he enjoys that stuff. So, right now I don't have any, but I think it'll be something I look into for sure.
Okay. I was wondering because that was the first thing I checked based on what he said. It's just kind of funny because he sounds like he wants to get you going.
Yeah, he'll ask me probably 50 times if I need a watch. So we'll see.
Last one for me, Connor. I just would love to know what are your expectations for Chicago this year?
I think just take a big step. Last year was hard. Losing that many games, it's hard. It's frustrating, and we're all competitive professional athletes. So, going into this year, we want to be playing important games. By the end of the year, and be in the fight, of course. So, we're really looking forward to getting back to it and getting it going.
Great, pleasure, man. All the best this year. Thanks so much.
Very much, Connor.
Thank you once again to Connor Bedard for his time with us last week down in Vegas. That'll do it for this edition of 32 Thoughts. We are back on Friday. A final reminder, a thought line is coming back. Bring the weird, as Elliotte mentioned. We are just a few days away from the opening of training camp on Wednesday. It's the medicals, the fitness testing, and then players will be on the ice on Thursday, inching closer and closer. Plenty of news surely to come out of the opening few days of camp. So we'll talk to you on Friday. Until then, have a great week. Thank you for listening.